It seems now that their best spokesperson is based on requests. Did you see this over the weekend, Clay? Based on requests from Democrat groups, their best spokesperson seems to be Pete Buttigieg, not Kamala Harris. Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary who went out on parental leave while you had
for a month,
massive supply chain crisis that was affecting people all over the country. Remember Jen Psaki saying, "Oh, the Peloton that gets delayed. Sorry." Like that was her. Yeah. That was her answer. By the way, Peloton stock. That's been a rough one recently.
Yeah, it has.
But here it is. We have Buttigieg saying that the American Rescue Plan essentially rescued the economy, and that's play clip 7. This is the best they can do to try to hold back the wave of realization about what a crappy economic environment we're in.
If you've pumped $3.6 trillion in fiscal spending into the economy and you're not politically getting credit for it and inflation is not coming down, how do you argue to the American people that it's actually the best alternative?
Because if we hadn't done that, if we hadn't rescued the economy through the American Rescue Plan, we would not have had the 10 million jobs that were created under this president. We wouldn't be seeing some of the lowest unemployment numbers in the history of the republic. We would be faced with the kinds of problems that we were faced with when the president arrived, which was an economy that was facing a very real risk of free fall. We're in a situation right now where demand has come back. Consumer confidence is up. People have more money in their pockets, and an almost record number of Americans are working.
I think the best way to describe this,
none of it.
This is eloquent idiocy. Every single point that he's making there. It sounds good to people who don't really understand maybe what's going on, but every single point he makes is not only easy to refute, it really insults the intelligence of the people watching. The notion that Biden has created 10 million jobs, ending shutdowns that did nothing to save anyone from COVID is not job creation, right? If you pass a mandate, hey, everybody in the service industry isn't allowed to do their jobs. If government says you're not allowed to do your jobs, and then they say, okay, we've decided you're allowed to do your jobs again, that's not job creation. And the fact that he talks about the trillions of spending saving the economy from what? The only thing that was bringing the economy down was the shutdowns. The existential risk to the economy right now, in terms of sending us deep into a recession, deep into a housing crash, is the spending, is the inflation actually. What they did created the problem, but they want people to believe that what they did saved us from catastrophe. This is the upside down world that Pete Buttigieg and the rest live in.
What they are still trying to argue is so easy to refute. They didn't create new jobs. They let people come back and do the jobs that they shut down during COVID. That's not creating new jobs. In fact, easily refuted as well by the data, we have a far lower employment rate among eligible workers today than we did in February of 2020. Everything would be better in this country. Every single thing would be better if Joe Biden had not passed a single bill since he got in the White House. If our Congress had just said, hey, we're not going to do anything, inflation would be lower. Everything that Joe Biden has done has made things worse objectively. This is not just me making the argument. You can go look at it. Every bit of economic data is worse than it would be if Joe Biden hadn't done a single thing. The trillions of dollars. And honestly, the only reason, Buck, we're not even in worse shape is because he didn't get the additional $5 trillion passed that he was trying to get done with Build Back Better. I mean, he made poor decisions, but the decisions that he tried to make were even worse. And the only reason we're not in that awful shape is because Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin actually showed a small bit of spine when it came to the original Build Back Better idea.
Well, they weren't completely insane. They were just a little bit insane and actually extracted some concessions. People forget this. Sinema made sure that the carried interest loophole for hedge funds and private equity guys stayed. They were going to get rid of that. So that's a great way to make sure the donor cash keeps flowing to you as a Democrat politician. While talking about Republicans are totally owning Wall Street these days, total nonsense. But the issue of government spending, you and I can't create dollars. Or, I mean, we could try, but the Secret Service would come and arrest us very quickly. We can't create money. The government is the problem behind inflation. There's no other party. There's no other, this is not just a general economic cycle issue.
Yep.
This is government spending. This is failed monetary policy. And when all you have to do, so that's point one. And point two, they'll say, oh, but look at the debt. It took a long time, and Trump was spending a lot too. Look at when this kicked off. You can be a coincidence theorist instead of a conspiracy theorist and think Joe Biden comes into office and inflation starts rocketing up just because, Clay, or you can recognize that immediately moving to spend $2 trillion of money that Democrats just felt like spending, given what we had already gone through with COVID, was crazy, and that the Build Back Better plan, and yes, even infrastructure, these things have actually made the problem, the single biggest economic problem for people, worse. I mean, the average American family has lost about $6,000 of spending power.
Yeah.
This year alone. That's a lot. That hurts.
That's why the ice cream eating ain't connecting. When Biden's saying, hey, the economy's really strong, yeah, you're not feeling it when you're going to the grocery store or when you're looking at your paycheck or when you're picking up gas. Your family is struggling because of failed policies by Joe Biden, the worst president of any of our lives.
So on the heels of that and everything Clay and Buck said was correct. Trump beat Biden. See the links in the video description. I've laid this all out for you guys. If you've paying attention, this is review, but it's always good to review. Trump beat Biden on the following, even counting the lockdowns, the plandemic lockdowns that began March 2020. I even skewed this in a way to make it look better for senile Joe Biden, starting the clock for him on labor force participation rates in January 2022 and not much earlier or in October 2021 when his first fiscal year began. Trump beat Biden on labor force participation rate men 25 to 54, labor force participation rate for whites overall, labor force participation rate for white men 20 years of age and older, and labor force participation rate for white women 20 years of age and older. That's even counting the plandemic lockdowns, which the Democrats wanted, which they used to hurt Trump, and they like paying people not to work. That's their base. Now, if I end Trump's numbers right before, I think that, as an aside, I think that might be why some Hispanics are banning them, because they see this horde coming over the border, and they're like, we work, and a lot of them aren't. We came to this country to work, not to sit around and do nothing. And that's the Democrats seem to be hell-bent for election on seeing how many people they can get to sit around and do nothing. Of course, if you're a meth head who wrecked your brains, you're not going to do anything anyway. That is also their base. Don't do drugs, kids. Now, if I end Trump's numbers right before the plandemic lockdowns that Democrat politicians exploited to shut down the economy and pay as many people as possible to not work, if I average Trump's numbers from the beginning of his first fiscal year, that's fiscal year 2018, beginning October 2017, his first full fiscal year, to February 2020, he beat Biden on the following. Trump beat Biden on labor force participation rate for men 25 to 54, labor force participation rate for whites overall, labor force participation rate for white men 20 years of age and older, labor force participation rate for white women 20 years of age and older, labor force participation rates for blacks overall. Trump beats Biden on labor force participation rates for men 25 to 34 and black women 20 years of age and older. About the only one that Biden won was Asians. And a lot of these, if you took Trump's fiscal year 2020 average right before the lockdowns, who knows where it would have went. But again, the Democrats love the lockdowns. On black men, pertaining to black men 20 years of age and older, Trump and Biden were virtually tied on their labor force participation rate, if I end Trump's numbers, right before the plandemic lockdowns. Pete Buttigieg's BS about low unemployment is just that. It's BS. It's only lower because so many people have left the labor force. This is a transportation secretary, and he is espousing nonsense that students in Econ 101 would scoff at. Well, unless you're AOC and you didn't get a math-based econ degree, you got a philosophy of economics degree, and you've never had a real job. Any job you've had in the private sector, you've never made enough to pay taxes. So, does little Pete actually believe this? nonsense, or is he lying? I think he's so dumb. Even Stan Seder knows he's dumb. Even Stan Seder won't defend that. And he's dumb. And he's an idiot. He's very malleable. He's just a big dumb goof. Pertaining to unemployment duration, people who are unemployed under senile Biden are unemployed on average almost 2 weeks longer than under Trump. When I collated Trump's numbers, it was fiscal year 2018 through 21 versus fiscal year 2022 for Joe Biden. So a lot of that under Trump was the plandemic lockdowns did a lot of damage. So Biden's clock starting October of 2021, he's still doing worse. As for the number of unemployed per 100,000 non-farm jobs, Trump's numbers from the beginning of fiscal year 2018 to right before the plandemic lockdowns, that is February 2020, number of unemployed per 100,000 non-farm jobs was 4,128.956. If you want to get that technical. For Joe Biden, and this was from October 2021 to July 2022, to avoid any preliminary data that may change. That's why I didn't go any further than July. So for Joe Biden, October 2021 to July 2022, 4,169 unemployed people per 100,000 non-farm jobs versus Trump's 4,129. Trump's doing better. So our transportation secretary is completely bereft of any wisdom. He is a vacuous troglodyte. I will also add, when I'm able to get my hands on the spending totals for fiscal year 2022, should be out in February or March, you will see stratospheric spending per 100,000 employed civilians way beyond any of the totals under Donald Trump. In other words, we are spending like we have never spent before, and the economy sucks. Joe Biden is sick, so is his economy. Next month, vote the bums out. And again, see the links in the video description. Just 2 links in there. They'll be the only links you need. And have a nice day. And again, vote the bums out.